Because Act 4, Scene 1 is 280 lines long, I'm going to split it into two, and so in this video we'll go up as far as Bianca's entrance on line 144. Act 4, Scene 1 opens in a street, where Othello and Iago enter. They're in the middle of a discussion, and Iago is toying with Othello, inflaming his jealousy even further as he asks him for his judgment on a number of increasingly compromising scenarios involving a married woman with another man. He seems to have implied, before we come upon them, that a kiss in private is nothing much to worry about. But Othello is outraged, deeming it an unauthorized or forbidden kiss. Iago asks him instead how he would feel about her being naked with her friend in bed an hour or more, not meaning any harm. We can clearly see that Iago is pretending to ask a naive question in order to anger Othello even more. Othello can't believe his ears. Naked in bed, Iago, and not mean harm? It is hypocrisy against the devil. They that mean virtuously and yet do so, the devil their virtue tempts, and they tempt heaven. Pretending to be sinful while actually being virtuous, he says, is asking for trouble, and is just as bad as pretending to be virtuous when actually being sinful. Iago dismisses this by saying that as long as they don't actually get up to anything, this is nothing but a venial slip, or a minor transgression, rather than a mortal sin. But, he says, if I give my wife a handkerchief... Othello, like a cat on a hot tin roof, interrupts him. What then? His response is deliberately anticlimactic in order to cause Othello maximum frustration. Why then 'tis hers, my lord, and being hers, she may, I think, bestow it on any man. Don't forget that, as discussed in the previous scene, Othello has already reified Desdemona's honour in the form of the handkerchief, so that it has become its proxy, and Iago knows this. To Othello's ears, Iago is as good as saying that a woman's virtue is hers to give to any man. His response cements this as he questions, she is protectress of her honour too. May she give that? Iago reminds Othello that honour is an essence that's not seen. They have it oft that have it not. He seems to be contradicting himself here, but actually what he's doing is reminding him that honour is not concrete and that women are often credited with having it, even when they've lost it. He adroitly brings the topic back onto the handkerchief itself, but Othello interrupts him once more, saying that he wishes he could forget it, but he can't because Iago has told him that Cassio has it, and the very thought of this makes him feel as though something bad is going to happen. By heaven, I would most gladly have forgot it. Thou saidst, oh, it comes o'er my memory as doth the raven o'er the infected house, boding to all. He had my handkerchief. Ravens were traditionally seen as birds of ill omen, and were thought to haunt the houses of people who were dying of the plague. Iago now suggests that he knows even more than he has already told Othello. He presents him with another hypothetical scenario by heavily insinuating that he has overheard Cassio, in the same way that other rogues who sleep with other men's wives are prone to do, boasting and bragging about his conquest of Desdemona. What if I had said I had seen him do you wrong, or heard him say, as knaves be such abroad, who having their own importunate suit or voluntary dotage of some mistress, convinced or supplied them, cannot choose but they must blab. Othello takes the bait. Hath he said anything? Iago confirms that this is indeed the case, but that Cassio would, of course, only deny it if challenged. When Othello demands details, Iago becomes reticent once more, as though he is uncomfortable telling the truth. He instead just utters one word, lie. Othello is frustrated. With her, he demands. With her, on her, what you will, responds a maddeningly ambiguous and nonchalant Iago. Othello is reaching the end of his tether, and he's beginning to lose his self-control. Note how his speech has reverted to prose as anger and jealousy overcome him. Lie with her, lie on her. We say lie on her when they belie or slander her. Lie with her? Zoons, that's fulsome. or disgusting. Note also how Iago's equivocation, which leads to the entertaining of two different meanings of the verb to lie, echoes the beginning of the previous scene between Desdemona and the clown. Meant then as witty and innocent banter, playing on to lodge and to tell untruths, we can see how this has foreshadowed this much more sinister double meaning of to have untruths told about you and to have sex with. As well as Othello's reversion to prose to communicate how his baser emotions have taken over him, also note how his speech becomes staccato and almost nonsensical. Handkerchief. Confessions. Handkerchief. His thoughts turn murderous as he imagines Cassio not even being given the time to confess his sins and obtain absolution before he is executed. First to be hanged and then to confess. And he trembles at the very thought of it. This lack of control he justifies, saying that it hasn't come out of nowhere and that it isn't merely words that have caused it. In other words, where there's smoke, there's fire. Nature would not invest itself in such shadowing passion without some instruction. It is not words that shakes me thus. He then begins to babble as he imagines the pair's intimacy as they kiss and nuzzle each other's faces. Noses, ears, lips. Is it possible? Confess? Handkerchief? Oh, devil! And he is now so worked up that he falls into a trance or has a seizure. Iago takes advantage of this brief moment where he is effectively alone to revel in his mischief and congratulate himself not only on the success of this plot in particular, but also on his ability to more generally get innocent females in trouble. Work on, my medicine, work. Thus credulous or gullible fools are caught, and many worthy and chaste dames even thus, or guiltless, meet reproach. Cassio enters, and Iago informs him that Othello has fallen into an epilepsy. And Cassio urges Iago to rub him about the temples. Iago declines, observing that the lethargy, or Othello's current state of unconsciousness, must have his quiet course. If not, he foams at mouth, and by breaks out to savage madness. Note how Iago continues to other Othello by characterising him as a wild and uncontrollable beast, almost like a rabid dog. As Othello begins to stir, Iago urges Cassio to withdraw yourself a little while. He hasn't finished with Othello and is not yet ready for him to confront Cassio. Cassio does as he's told, and Iago solicitously asks Othello, "Have you not hurt your head?" Presumably because it's fallen awkwardly to the floor. But of course Othello takes this in the wrong way, as Iago knew he would, obsessed as he is with being a cuckold, and thinks that Iago is referring to the cuckold's horns which were said to sprout from the forehead of a man whose wife had been unfaithful. "Dost thou mock me?" asks Othello self-pityingly. "Of course not," Iago protests. "I just wish you'd handle the fact that she's cheated on you like a man." Note that Iago will go on to question Othello's manhood several more times. Othello responds that a horned man's a monster and a beast. In other words, a cuckold is not a man, but a debased creature. Well, if that's the case, says Iago, there's many a beast then in a populous city, and many a civil monster. Iago once more urges Othello to be a man, as he's not the only one with an unfaithful wife. There's millions now alive that nightly lie in those improper beds which they dare swear peculiar. In other words, there are a lot of men who unknowingly go to sleep in a bed which they effectively share with their wife's lover. He argues that Othello is better off, because at least he is aware that he's being cheated on, whereas for those who don't, 'tis the spite of hell, the fiend's arch mock, or the devil's supreme mockery, to lip a wanton in a secure couch and to suppose her chaste. He would rather be certain of being a cuckold, because then he could be certain of what his wife's fate would be. No, let me know, and knowing what I am, I know what she shall be. He now commands Othello to go and have some time out in order to get a grip, as he informs him that, whilst you were here, overwhelmed with your grief, which he reminds him in another jibe at his manhood is a passion most unsuiting such a man, Cassio came hither. He tells him to go and conceal himself, so that when Cassio returns, he will be able to mark or observe the fleers, the gibes, and notable scorns that dwell in every region of his face. What is more, he promises him that not only will Othello see Cassio's contempt for him written all over his face, but that he will also make him tell the tale anew, where, how oft, how long ago, and when he hath and is again to cope or have sex with your wife. But, he says, you must have patience, or I shall say you're all in spleen, and nothing of a man. Othello agrees that he will be found most cunning or crafty in my patience, but dost thou hear most bloody? Yes, says Iago, but your bloody vengeance will come all in good time. Othello withdraws. Left alone, Iago soliloquizes in order to communicate just how he intends to get Cassio to appear to say that he has slept with Desdemona. Now will I question Cassio of Bianca, a hussif that by selling her desires buys herself bread and clothes. It turns out then that Bianca is not Cassio's mistress after all, but merely a prostitute whom Cassio pays for sex. Unfortunately, though, she seems to have fallen hard for Cassio, and from what we saw earlier, is perhaps nurturing dreams that this may blossom into a genuine romance. Cassio, if what Iago says is true, finds these unrealistic hopes hilariously funny. He, when he hears of her, cannot refrain from the excess of laughter, and it is this that Iago is going to exploit to make it seem as though Cassio is talking of Desdemona, which will enrage Othello. As he shall smile, Othello shall go mad, and his unbookish or naive jealousy must construe poor Cassio's smiles, gestures, and light behaviours quite in the wrong. Note how this portion of the scene will be spoken in prose to complement the baseness of the men's topic of conversation. Iago, in greeting Cassio, taunts him under the guise of showing him respect by addressing him by the title he has just lost. How do you now, Lieutenant? This has the desired effect, as Cassio responds, the worse that you give me the addition or title whose want even kills me. Iago swiftly but quietly brings the subject round to Cassio's own love life, and Othello, who is concealed a little way off, can hear just enough to get the gist of what is being said, but not that what is being said pertains to Bianca and not to Desdemona. Note how this portion of the scene is multi-layered. We have the interaction between Iago and Cassio, while, unknown to Cassio, Othello is observing and commenting in asides that only the audience can hear, on what he believes he is seeing and hearing. Cassio agrees with Iago's appraisal that Bianca seems to be in love with him, but he makes it very clear that he does not feel the same way. He calls her a poor caitiff, or wretch, and a poor rogue. Iago tells him that she gives out, or goes round telling people, that you shall marry her. Cassio, as Iago expected he would, finds this hilarious. I marry her? What, a customer? I prithee bear some charity to my wit. Do not think it so unwholesome. Othello, in an aside from the sidelines, makes the call of a huntsman encouraging his hounds to chase their prey, as he reminds him that he who laughs last laughs longest. So, they laugh that wins. Cassio pooh-poohs the report of his and Bianca's future wedding, and says that this is merely wishful thinking on her part, because she has fallen in love with him. This is the monkey's own giving out. She is persuaded I will marry her out of her own love and flattery, not out of my promise. Confident that Cassio will not now mention Bianca by name, Iago surreptitiously beckons Othello closer, so that he can actually hear what he is saying. Cassio moans that Bianca follows him everywhere. Only the other day he was talking on the sea bank with certain Venetians, presumably people he knows from back home, and thither comes this bauble, or plaything, and by this hand falls me thus about my neck. Cassio finds it hilarious, if not a little embarrassing, that his prostitute is publicly throwing her arms around his neck in front of his colleagues. Othello, believing him to be describing Desdemona, fills in the gaps for himself as he reads even more detail into Cassio's body language, crying, "Oh dear, Cassio," as it were. His gesture imports it. Cassio continues to describe Bianca's embarrassing behaviour. "So hangs and lolls and weeps upon me, so hails or tugs and pulls me." Othello, beside himself with jealousy, imagines that this is Desdemona hauling Cassio off to their bed, and he fantasises about what he will do to him as a punishment. Now he tells how she plucked him to my chamber. "Oh, I see that nose of yours, but not that dog I shall throw it to." "Anyway," says Cassio, "I need to stop seeing her. Enough's enough." "Well, what do you know? Talk of the devil," exclaims Iago. "'Tis such another fichu. Marry a perfumed one," remarks Cassio. A fichu is another name for a polecat or ferret, creatures which are known for their smell when they're sexually aroused. Cassio is clearly being incredibly unkind and derogatory about her here. It seems that his courtly manners, for which Iago was mocking him earlier, only go so far and are limited to when he is with those ladies of the upper classes whom he deems worthy. Bianca enters. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques, and English literature texts.